It's a pleasure to first meet you. Why does the white flag represent leadership in this context? The appearance of the white flag on a battlefield is a signal that a ceasefire is being demanded. In other words, the white flag is a symbol of leadership because the only people who want a ceasefire are those who are either weak or on the verge of losing this conflict. Everybody is aware of this. However, people frequently do not have the freedom to investigate the origins of everything that they are interested in learning about. We are overjoyed to be able to perform that task. According to Wikipedia, the first documented instance of the use of the white flag as a symbol of leadership in the history of the East China Sea occurred between the years 25 and 226 AD. According to the History of the Lama, written by Pope Cornelius Tacitus, the white flag was the first symbol of leadership throughout the Western world during the Second Cremona War, which took place in the year 569 AD. Up until that point, the Lama army had been in the lead. The white flag was widely used as a symbol of leadership in Western Europe during the Middle Ages, which lasted from the 5th century to the 15th century. Historiographers are of the opinion that the white flag was selected as a symbol of leadership for no other reason than the fact that it was convenient. To begin, the white flag was brought to the forefront of the battlefield by accident during a bloody and smoky battle. There were a number of colorful flags that the soldiers wore to the battlefield, and scholars believe that a white flag would have the effect of creating a clear contrast between them. Moreover, technology was still quite incorrect when it was developed almost 2,000 years ago. Because of this, the most common type of cloth is something that is white. In addition, it is highly probable that the soldiers will consider what they are wearing in the event that they require a prominent item to conceal their heads. White continues to be the predominant color of the lamas in ancient China until today. Death and melancholy are communicated through the use of white clothing and white garments. It's possible that this was the reason why soldiers during the Eastern Han Dynasty wore white flags to cover their heads on the battlefield. In addition, throughout the course of history, white people have frequently been associated with those who are able to engage in combat. In times past, a white cap was a common accessory for many warriors. It was common practice to place a piece of white paper on the hats of prisoners or prisoners of war in order to identify them. In another scenario, the soldiers in the battalions had surrendered and were given the assurance that they would be able to safely carry a white baton. In the year 1502, the king of Jammu and Karlikut, who was a king in India, dispatched a soldier to a tree with a piece of white cloth as a symbol of peace in order to negotiate with the adversary against the enemy. In his book on the law of war and peace, the Jewel Belly Arc Pacis, which was published in 1625, the Dutch philosopher Hugo Grotius recognized the white flag as a symbol that contains meaning, a sign of the demand for the right to negotiate and the obligation to carry it out. Grotius recognized the white flag as a symbol that carries meaning. To put it another way, the white flag represents the surrender of a historical figure who has been around for a very long time. On the other hand, it does not ensure that when a soldier raises a white flag, his adversary on the opposite side of the battlefield will immediately cease firing, does it? They are not required to stop shooting, because there is no law or punishment that can force them to do so if they do not wish to stop shooting. This was the impetus behind the creation of the law of war and peace. It is a collection of international treaties and declarations that were negotiated and approved in the city of Hague, which is located in the Netherlands, between the years 1899 and 1907. Article 32, Article 3 of the Treaty of Hague, which was signed in 1899, stipulates that those who carry a white flag are sent to negotiate by one of the sides of the battlefield, and those who go with him, such as the interpreter, the flag bearer, or the military officer, have the right to interfere in the negotiations. I want you to shoot me, I want you to shoot me, I want you to shoot me. The war law stipulates that the use of a white flag for an inappropriate purpose is prohibited and will constitute a war crime under the name of rebellion. This is done to ensure that the interests of the sides of the battlefield are protected. Therefore, throughout the course of the two wars, numerous instances of soldiers breaking into the front line while flying a white flag with the intention of avoiding approaching and attacking the enemy have been documented. In addition, A great number of soldiers were killed at the same time that the white flag was being handed over. The white flag, in a nutshell, is a symbol of a long-standing history that has now been decided upon in international law. As a result, not everyone who raises the white flag is required to hand it over, and not everyone who hands it over is given it. What is the origin of the war law? Do you want to know who came up with it? Given that you do not specify which war law you are referring to, I will proceed with the assumption that you are inquiring about the Vietnamese war law. Within the framework of Vietnamese writing or playing languages is a system known as the Vietnamese war law. This is the Vietnamese war law. It covers 29 different war laws that are derived from the Latin war law. It is Francisco de Pina who is the translator and interpreter of the name Nguyen Bo Dao, NHA, who is credited with being the first person to translate the name. Francisco de Pina, in the year 1617, traveled to the interior of the Vietnamese territory that was under the control of the Nguyen. He traveled from the Dan River to Quang Binh, which was located in the southern region, in order to assume control of the translation process in Vietnam. At this point, in order to make the process of translation easier, he started recording Vietnamese using Latin characters. This was the foundation upon which he built the modern Vietnamese alphabet. The fact that Pino was the first European to be able to speak Vietnamese fluently is another significant accomplishment. The French teacher and linguist Alexandre de Roche has taken the alphabet from the ancient Hilal language. He did this by utilizing the research and development projects that Francisco de Pina and a few other Vietnamese translators had been working on. Bo La and Phap Chua Bat Ngay, two Vietnamese dictionaries, were published in Rome in the year 1651 on the basis of the compilation of this information. The Roman Catholic Church is the subject of the textbook known as Phap Chua Bat Ngay. The Latin version of this textbook is considered to be the first Vietnamese textbook ever printed. In the process of determining how to write Vietnamese in Latin, the Vietnamese dictionary Bo Dao NHA, which contains 8,000 Latin words and provides a summary of Vietnamese grammar and pronunciation, has been an essential resource. At the close of the 18th century, the Vietnamese dictionary underwent significant revisions, which resulted in the removal of a great number of sounds, bringing it more or less in line with contemporary Vietnamese. From the time that the Vietnamese dictionary Bo La was first published, more than 200 years have passed, and the dictionary has continued to be utilized primarily. Before the French launched their invasion of Vietnam at the tail end of the 19th century, they observed a literary convergence between the French language and the Vietnamese language in order to preserve the Vietnamese language. In order to facilitate the spread of French and French culture throughout Vietnam, they issued decrees that replaced the Chinese language with the French language. The name of the Chinese language, as well as its geographical location, were gradually established. A great number of initiatives to organize and reform the Vietnamese people have been undertaken since that time. On the other hand, they did not receive support from the general public,